I'm so glad you've taken time out of your day to join us on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And I hope you're enjoying your summer so far, maybe squeezing in a little travel. And Christa, this is a special day in your life for your dad.
It's my daddy's birthday today. Happy birthday, Dad. And you love this number, too, 7-Eleven. You love a convenience store.
I do love convenience stores.
Yeah.
And recently, when we did a drive up and down the East Coast, I got to go to 3 of my favorites. Got to go to Sheetz,
Wawa,
and Quick Trip.
It's the little things.
I feel so badly for people on the West Coast that, in the Western states, they don't have these wonderful convenience store gas station chains with clean bathrooms and all that stuff.
Everyone should have I feel bad that everyone hasn't had the experience of driving up to one of these convenience stores with you, because you really are like a little kid. It's like your first day at the candy store, and you point out all these things that nobody else would notice.
I have this thing. I make the mundane exciting and the exciting mundane. And so I get to one of these state-of-the-art convenience stores, and I'm like, oh, look at that. They've changed what kind of flooring they're using. I guess they were having trouble with that flooring or whatever. And I like study what they do. I study their food menus as they become big competitors of fast food and quick serve restaurants, and how they do things and what the employees are like.
Yeah.
So no lie. All right. I was in a Sheetz in Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Sheetz, they're one of these big convenience store chains.
And whenever Clark drives up to a Sheetz, by the way, he always goes, Sheetz.
So anyway, so there's an employee on a ladder who is scrubbing the walls.
Wow.
To get the grime inside, not outside, but inside, making sure that the walls were shiny.
That's impressive.
I mean, wow.
That's very unusual. I mean, that's very cool.
What does this have to do with anything we're talking about?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, tangent. My dad's 7-Eleven birthday.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. We have a habit of doing that, don't we? Or I always do. You know, truth is, when I was growing up, if we'd had all that stuff, I would have been every initial they talk about. I mean, no doubt I would have been those things.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So actually what I want to talk about is something involving your wallet. And the travel I'm talking about is not the travel I love to do, but I do this too, is how much are you willing to travel to save money on stuff you're buying? Well, with stuff we buy like clothing or appliances or electronics, we'll go place to place to place. But historically, we would go to one place to buy groceries. But what we did do is not what we're doing right now. I want to tell you what people are doing to save money because of the price pressure we feel putting food in our mouths. And later, the housing market, all the talk about the housing market misses the central problem. We flat out do not have enough housing units in the United States, period. We are millions short. And the path to go from the shortage of millions of houses to having equilibrium is clear as it could possibly be. And we're not doing what other places already are doing. I'm going to tell you what it is and what it's going to take to get it done. That's later. So, the grocery thing. I shared with you recently that people are actually buying less groceries than they used to. People are buying less stuff. And I also shared with you that store brands are picking up a lot more market share. That people are buying the private label. A lot of the private labels are fantastic, and truth be told, a lot of times they're made by brand name manufacturers that in contract with the store will put their label on them. But Now we've got so many places we can buy groceries. You're never going to guess who, if you take the wide measurement that you're buying food to put in your mouth, who's the third largest grocer in the United States now? Who do you think it is? It's Costco Wholesale. Yeah. And they sell very limited number of grocery items. But it's like a third of their square footage now is groceries. We no longer think of going just to a supermarket. Think about who the largest grocer is in the United States. Walmart. Walmart is 1/3 groceries, 2/3 general merchandise. Same ratio as Costco, right? But they're the largest grocer in the country. And then the fastest growing grocer in the United States is Aldi. Aldi is an acquired taste. I love Aldi. Other people may not so much. So what we're doing is we're going to multiple places to buy our groceries. We're no longer thinking of groceries as a grocery trip to this one place. So the competition is wide open now. And Americans in much larger numbers than the past are buying groceries at different places than just a traditional supermarket, and it's saving you a lot of money. And at the same time, we're not overbuying, which is something historically we've done as Americans, because do you know prior to this wave of inflation in groceries that we had, per dollar earned, we had pretty much the cheapest groceries in the world in the United States. And this is not going to sound possible, but versus income, still a lot cheaper than most other places in the world, even today after the run of grocery price inflation. So the tactics are clear to save money. Convenience with groceries, that's your enemy. That is your direct enemy. Because the more you break habit and you buy groceries at different places, depending on what's available and what's a deal. I'm not talking about you spending hours in your vehicle going place to place to place to place, burning up precious gasoline or electrons if you drive electric. I'm talking about being intentional, that you know that you're going to buy this, that, or the other wherever. My wife was at Costco just yesterday, and our son drinks apple juice like it's absolutely the key food item you should have in your life. And she came home. It's funny. It's like out of a skit. She came home with this thing of apple juice that's so big that even on our tallest shelf in the refrigerator, it will not fit upright. It has to lay on its side. I didn't know they sold something that was that big for apple juice. But buying where the deal is intentionally rather than going to one place and just, oh, well, that sure is expensive today, and buying that, it's your money. What's referred to as the one-stop shop for groceries, that's so over.
Yeah, for sure.
How many stores do you go to buy groceries?
1, 2, 3. 3, and then I use Amazon Fresh sometimes for certain items because they're cheaper. And if I order a certain amount, I think it's $100, I get free delivery. You can pay to get free delivery for less, but it's not worth it to me because I'll just put in an order for these specific items that last me a long time every month or so, and it's just over $100, and so, yeah. It's
free delivery.
Yeah.
So poor Amazon, every time they're doing that, they're taking money from the stockholders and giving it to you. Amazon has never been able to figure out groceries to save its life.
And they do have some really good deals. Like I'll switch around the produce I'm ordering depending on what's on sale, and they have very nice produce.
And you never know what's actually true, but I'm seeing more and more stuff where there's rumors that Amazon's going to spin off Whole Foods because they've never been able to make it work. It'll be interesting to see if they eventually throw in the towel and say, well, that was nice while it lasted, or if they do just continue their attempt to make Whole Foods work.
I also want to mention that I did tell you, Clark, not on the podcast, that Aldi has, you'd already seen it, organic grass-fed beef now.
Yes.
Since you like to eat beef. But you said that you don't cook, so that doesn't matter to you. But other people might want to know that, because please don't send Clark stinks about how grass-fed doesn't matter and all that stuff. If you're someone who thinks it's important to eat grass-fed, they do have that at Aldi.
And Aldi has gone so much into organics because Aldi just follows what their customers want and gives them what they want. And it's funny because you'll see Aldi has such limited selection, and a lot of times they'll have the organic version of something right next to the non-organic. So it's kind of like ketchup, one, mustard, one. You know, each category, they're not Noah's Ark. They got one of each thing. But now because of organic, they actually do have a Noah's Ark thing with a lot of items where they have the organic next to the non-organic.
Okay, well,
Which do you think I buy?
I was just going to, I know.
We're not going into that.
John in Florida says, someone asked a question about towing problems using AAA on your podcast. You never really gave a good answer on the best option to pay for a tow truck.
Yeah, that's because this is hard depending on how isolated you are and what you experience. The last tow I had to have was $769. We were in the, to call it the middle of nowhere. We were in the middle of nowhere.
We were, yeah.
And had to have a car towed hundreds and hundreds of miles. And even if I'd been AAA, which I am, and I'd used AAA towing, and even if I had the premium AAA, I still would have been out like $500 or something. This is hard because I'm asking you versus paying for a AAA membership with usually each AAA operation regionally runs its own thing, but as a general rule, 4 tows a year. You use it too often, they throw you out, and you don't know how long you're going to wait. So it is one of those things that I think is better served in the free market. I mean, here I have AAA membership, and when I needed a tow, I did not bother calling AAA because of all the complaints we've heard about their towing. So you call around. And that's what we did. The difference in the tow that was many hundreds of miles was the highest quote we had was $1,250. Then we had an $1,100 tow. And then the third quote was $769. I was like, I'll take it. And the guy was there in 15 minutes.
Mary in Michigan says, can you give advice on when to let teenagers have complete control of their money? My daughter recently turned 18 and has her own savings account. Up until this point, I have managed her accounts, and she is well set for her college needs. Despite near constant guidance and advice, she has not demonstrated responsible money management thus far. Without forced savings of some of her earnings, she spends exceedingly on clothes and treats. I know it's best to take a step back and let her have complete control, but I'm worried that without any oversight, she will burn through her savings and potentially not have enough to fund the entirety of her college. Live and learn or continue to have some control.
So legally, in most states, that's her money at 18. But there's legal and there's what's really goes on. In some cases, it's 21, depending on when you gain control of money. The best thing to do is leave things as they are unless she demands control of the money. She doesn't have the emotional maturity yet to handle money without just blowing it. There are people in their 30s who don't have the emotional maturity to handle their money. But definitely there's a progression with a lot of people from teen years into their early 20s where they do become better with money, particularly when they start working for a living and they have to pay their bills and they realize, oops, I really shouldn't spend this for that or that for the other. And so, Mary, I think you know your daughter. She's not ready to handle the responsibility of it. And this is a case where she learns in your school, not the school of hard knocks, unless, she demands the money.
All right. And then a different perspective. This one came in from Leanne in New York. She says, I'm 14 years old and I live with my dad. I just found out that he makes $4 million a year.
What?
I live a somewhat upper middle class lifestyle. He was homeless growing up, so I guess he's scared. For reference, I live in a $1.5 million house. I work for all the stuff I have. We have one car from 2008 and one $40,000 car. He's always claiming we have financial issues, though he doesn't gamble or really go out at all and doesn't spend money on items other than the house and cars. My friends were shocked considering the way I live. I need to know if my perception of money is messed up because I don't want to seem spoiled, and I feel like this is only going to harm my perspective on money if my friends are correct. I'm very confused right now, and I know this sounds so spoiled, but I need to change my mindset if this is true.
So, Leanne...
So basically the friends were like, you shouldn't be living like this.
Yeah, so your dad must work for a publicly traded company that it was public what he makes in his executive job. And you don't know what went on before that, what financial obligations your dad may have that you're not aware of. And you're living in $1.5 million house. It's obviously a very nice house. And your dad may also realize that having a highly paid job may not last forever. It doesn't. At some point, he could be unemployed. So he may be like a bear preparing for winter, preparing, for tougher times when things are scarce. And so you're living a nice upper middle class lifestyle. And there's something, Leanne, I want you to know, and that is that most people in school, and I've done this over and over again over the years, if I show them 2 slides, and one of them is a family with a big fancy house and new cars and a boat and all kinds of stuff, and then I show another family with a more modest house and older cars and not a bunch of fancy things, and I ask in the classroom, doesn't matter if they're in elementary school or in high school or middle school, and I ask, which is the family that's millionaires? Overwhelmingly, the students say it's the family with the big house and the new cars and the boat and stuff. Where the reality is, the point is actually the opposite. That people who have a lot of showy stuff tend to not have anything backing it up. Your dad being careful with money may be because of the harshness of his youth and being homeless at times as a kid. I know my dad came home twice from school to find their stuff out on the street.
Wow.
And how that affected him in certain ways his whole life. And so your dad, things that happen to us when we're young do become part of the architecture of who we are as a person. So you're not lacking for food, clothing, shelter, anything like that. And I think you should respect your dad's money values, because those values are creating long-term security for you and him. You can always have more things. You can always have more fancy cars. You can always have more jewelry, whatever. But it doesn't create wealth and security. And I'm the wrong person to ask, Leanne, because I'm all about being careful with my money. I think what your dad's doing is almost certainly the right thing.
And I would also just add, Leanne, be curious. This is a general life lesson. Like, talk to people and be curious. Maybe talk to your dad about his money values and what he does, and ask him to teach you how to save, and just find out more from him. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about it.
But it's not at all unusual at 14.
Mm-hmm.
At 14, that you feel like your friends are like, hey, why don't you have this bling? Why don't you have that? Why don't you have the other? And that is part of being a mid-teen, is that people want to have all this stuff. But what really matters over time, and this is key for life, it's never what you make. It's always what you don't spend that counts.
You don't want to be all flash, no cash, as you say.
Or in Texas, as they say, all hat, no cattle. You haven't heard that one?
I've not heard that one,
Yeah.
no.
So transplants to Texas haven't heard that either.
Good for you for reaching out to Clark, though, Leanne. I think that's awesome.
And maybe this is an opportunity, like Christa said, for you to have a general conversation or series of conversations with your dad about his philosophies about money. Try it. Coming up ahead, we're going to talk about my philosophy about housing and how we as a country are failing to perform as we should for our fellow Americans. And I'm going to tell you what that means to me, why this is something I'm always so fired up about. I'm just frustrated as I could be about the housing shortage we have in the United States. It's affecting people of all different incomes, all different ways. And this isn't some kind of grand conspiracy. There are accidents of history that caused our extreme housing shortage in the United States. Ironically enough, it started by us nearly 20 years ago having the opposite problem in the United States. We had an extreme excess of housing in the United States. We had overbuilt housing. We didn't have enough people to put in all the housing. And that and the banking scandals led to the Great Recession and the destruction of most housing production capacity in the United States. 15 years ago, we had so many builders. Today we have so few. And at the same time, if you've listened to me for multiple decades, you've been hearing me tilt at windmills like Don Quixote because for, my whole adult life, I've been like, why are we building houses today, housing like we did long, long ago, with such an inefficient and extreme labor component? The ability exists that is absolutely obvious that we can build high quality, affordable housing with production building, which involves building in factories or new methods of construction. And a lot of the companies that I got excited about mid-last decade went bust. There was some Clark Stinks about that. I was all excited about these production builders that would build houses in components and factories, and they went bust. And why did they go bust? One of the theories is that we use an antiquated and really lame building code system in the United States that drills down building codes to as small a units as local cities or counties. That if you're going to do production building, you have to be able to have a uniform code of minimum standards in terms of the safety and quality of materials used. Other countries have done it. I mean, I've talked in the past about Scandinavia, how because of the weather and by having uniform building codes, they have these high volume production builders that build homes in components, and they're able to build in a fraction of the time. I've talked about the scattered efforts around the United States to do these 3D printed homes that my wife thinks are the ugliest things that ever existed, that are built out of concrete. But they're built fast, and they're built a lot cheaper. And right now what we need is we need two things. We need quality, and we need better prices. And you can do both of those, and we can have the free lunch. We can have, if we change our mentality about how we build in the United States, we can build the volume we need, we can build the quality we need, and we can get the prices better if we just put our national energy into it. You know, we in America, as Churchill said, and I'll misquote him, America does the right thing after we try every wrong alternative, however he said that. And we're spinning our wheels on housing. We're not producing nearly enough for the need in the U.S. And so we just need the will and the desire to make it happen. And when I see what happens with how we're still building houses, for the most part, sticks up on site with the inefficiency of, well, that sub didn't show up today and that one, they left early and all that, and so I can't come and do this because they haven't done that. This is something that people have already cracked the code on and solved it. And that's what we need to be about in America. You know, so often I feel like we can't get out of our own way in America with things that we know need to get done, need to get fixed. And we're not trying to get the solutions done. We're stuck. This is one I promise we can fix, because you can see others are already making it happen.
All right. This came in from Christa in Canada. She says, what criteria...
So you have a twin in Canada?
No, she spells it different. But, okay.
So she spelled it wrong then?
No.
Okay.
Christa says, what criteria do you suggest using to decide whether to rent or purchase a second residence for part-time living? I would like to spend 6 months of the year in Florida, and I've been looking at small single-family houses in the greater Tampa area. I've reached financial independence and am debating whether to make the purchase or just rent a house every winter for the foreseeable future. I know the advantages of ownership about RE equity and potential for some rental income when I'm not there, plus being able to have my bike and stand-up paddleboard waiting for me and my dog. The advantage of renting being flexibility of not being tied to it every year and not having to maintain a second property. My primary residence is near Toronto, Canada. How would you go about making such a decision?
Well, right now the unknowns in Florida are such that it really is a better financial decision to rent and not buy. The time will come again where it would make sense if you decide Florida is your long-term play to buy. But we've got three factors going on in Florida right now. First, there was a big run-up in home values as a result of COVID, where a lot of people from other states chafing under the lockdowns or whatever you call what we had, went to Florida, which was open for business, as they like to say there. And so a lot of people migrated there. Then we've had the problem of the availability and cost of homeowners insurance. You as a non-Florida resident buy under a different process than people that are Florida residents. And you're subject to the whims of the marketplace. And you could find yourself buying a place that, again, is more expensive than it would have been by a long shot than just a few years ago, buying a place that you then can't insure at some point because you're not eligible for the state's last resort lender that insures so many people in the state. So in Florida, there are a bunch of seasonal rentals, just as you might intend to do with a place that you would buy and own, you mentioned. I would rather you do, and the key number in Florida is 7 month. 7 month leases are what people do to avoid hotel motel taxes, even if you would only intend to occupy for 6. You rent for 7. I would like for you to bide some time. Rent for a while, wait for the housing market to settle down, wait for the insurance market to stabilize. Make sure after several years of renting that it's time for you and your dog and your paddleboard to have your permanent place, and that's when I would make the move, not right now.
This is from Ava in Ohio. I'm starting college at Ohio State in the fall.
Buckeye!
Yes.
The Ohio State University.
One of my friends recommended UNiDAYS, a site for college students to save on all sorts of stuff. In order to access the deals, you must input your email and agree to the terms of service. I'm writing to inquire whether or not this is safe and reliable for me to use and input my info. I'm excited about the possibility of these deals, but wary as my mom is a huge proponent of your podcast and the information that you provide.
So UNiDAYS is not a scam, but UNiDAYS oversells what it does. The values you'll get there are not necessarily as good as what you'll find in the general marketplace. Their whole thing is it's almost like a multi-level of attracting people with referrals and things like that. So I would say that this is not the go-to to where to buy things while you're in college at OSU or anyone else going anywhere else. Again, not a scam, but not necessarily a deal at all. And if you want to join, you can join, but I wouldn't put this as a high priority at all. The higher priority should be, is this the season that Ohio State's going to beat Michigan? I mean, that's the priority you should be worried about.
And so I did read a lot of the Trustpilot reviews too, and some people think it's great, but basically you should shop around any deal you find on there because you might find bigger discounts on other websites for the brands that you might want. Tiziano in New York says, in a few years, my son will be through college. If I use his 529 to give him $7,000 into a Roth when he has a job, does that mean he can do a separate Roth and get a total of $14,000 per year? 7 from his 529 and 7 from his own income.
Nope. Wouldn't that be great? So the 35 grand you're allowed to move from a 529 plan tax-free into the Roth IRA for the benefit of the beneficiary, your child. You're capped at 7 grand each year from the 529, which is why it takes a minimum 5 years to migrate that money from the 529 into a Roth IRA. It's a fantastic benefit that Congress gave families where a kid may scholarship out or not decide to go to college or whatever, and that 529 money becomes a tax bomb because you got to pay taxes on what would have been tax-free. So this provision of being able to move up to $35,000 from a 529 to a Roth tax-free, have it continue to grow tax-free for your child's entire working lifetime, you can't double dip. So if there was money left over, it means you're funding the Roth each year up to $7,000 with the money from the 529, and your son's total Roth contribution would be $0 that he can add to it in any year that you've done the total $7,000. Let's say you put $5,000 from a 529. Let's say that was what was left over from your son's college 529, and you move that $5,000 over into the Roth. That means the year you move it, he can put $2,000 in it. Again, to a total of $7,000. It's a wonderful thing, though, that we now have this Roth option as an escape valve from 529s, but it's not a tool that allows you to double dip. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. Do you know what tomorrow is? Friday, which means Clark Stinks is coming your way tomorrow. I can't wait. It's where you get to hear where somebody feels I gave an incomplete answer, missed some key elements, or gave information or opinion that's flat out wrong. And it's so helpful to me to grow as a person. I want to tell you how much I appreciate all the people who post on Clark Stinks. And what we're about for you is you being empowered with knowledge that helps you save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off. And see you tomorrow.